voice can break the dark. A single spark ignites the heart. But if we turn when justice calls, the chains we forge will bind us all. When truth is silenced, when lies take hold, the cost is freedom, the soul grows cold. No one stands tall while another must fall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, defending every voice, defending every right. For the moment we falter, the moment we stall, we lose our own freedom when we let others fall. You can't stand free while others kneel. When justice fades, it's freedom they steal. An innocent condemned, a crime unspoken, and with it the bond of liberty is broken. No tyrant rules without our consent. Oppression thrives where silence is spent. Stand for the weak, the silence is small, or freedom will crumble for us all. We're mavericks of freedom, guardians of the light, fighting for the truth, for what is just and right. For the rights of one are the rights of all. We rise or we fall by answering the call. Even those we may oppose deserve the rights we all uphold. For if we deny them what is fair, we build our own prison in despair. The fight's not easy, it never will be, but justice for one is the key to be free. We stand as mavericks, together we strive, defending the rights that keep freedom alive. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, upholding every truth, protecting every right. When one is oppressed, we're all in the thrall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. So take a stand, let your courage rise. Defend the truth, don't compromise. For the soul of the world, the writing's on the wall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all.
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Hey, everybody. It is Sunday, April 13th, 2025. And the world is unstable. China hitting back pretty hard, I would say, on these Trump tariffs. Harder, I think, than anyone realizes, because I don't think the media here in Canada or the US is really giving us the level of coverage with regard to that it warrants. Rare earth magnets, supply cut, we'll talk about that and what that means, and China threatening a trade tsunami, a flood of cheap products. In part, in retaliation to what Trump is doing. I don't think he holds all the cards in this case. Also, a police officer in Vancouver set on fire, charges laid, and fallout from the pro-Palestinian protests in Ottawa yesterday. We're still seeing the reverberations of that, feeling that today. I will be right back, and we'll start digging into today's top news stories, and I think we may just go to the phones to give you guys a voice. Stay with me. I'll be right back.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching.
The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Before we get into any of the other stuff, though, I should say that, well, what we will do is we'll go right now to this news conference with Pierre Poilievre. He is promising to bring in tougher rules on corruption and conflicts of interests. He's going to strengthen the Accountability Act. MP Michael Barrett kicking off the news conference, explaining from his perspective why the Conservatives continue with this narrative of Carney being in a conflict of interest because of his past association with Brookfield, the asset management company. Here's Michael Barrett. Let's bring this back. Hang on. Here we go.
Over the last 5 years, everyday Canadians have suffered from liberal inflation. But believe it or not, some liberal insiders secretly love inflation. Why? Because if you own a lot of assets, inflation causes their value to soar. Remember, it was Mark Carney who advised Trudeau to open up the spending taps, making everything more expensive for Canadians. Why would he do that? Well, here's a clue. In 2022, while most Canadians were watching the value of their paychecks collapse under an avalanche of inflation, Brookfield CEO wrote to his shareholders to gloat about how much money they were making off of inflation. Brookfield CEO said, and I quote, "Many of our infrastructure, renewables, and real estate assets are positioned to benefit from inflation," end quote. And in 2023, he wrote to shareholders again to say that, quote, "The stress in the market is our sweet spot," end quote. Your pain was his gain. As Trudeau's economic advisor, Carney was supposed to be working for Canadians. But his advice to Trudeau made you poorer while he lined his own pockets and the pockets of his rich friends. At the same time, he advised Trudeau to raise taxes on Canadians, taxes that he knew he wouldn't have to pay after he stashed his company's funds in exotic Caribbean tax havens. This is not the first time that Mark Carney has been accused of conflicts of interest. In the UK, when he was acting as an advisor to the Labour government, he lobbied a Labour minister for government subsidies for heat pumps that would enrich a heat pump company owned by Brookfield. The chairman of the company even admitted that, quote, Mark is working on our behalf in government, end quote. Meanwhile, here in Canada, Carney's conflicts touch everything from nuclear energy to real estate to tax policy to his dealings with the Chinese government and shadowy Bermuda tax havens. Incredibly, we still don't know whether or not Mark Carney actually pays taxes in Canada. And now, as Prime Minister, the current conflict of interest rules don't even require him to sell his assets in Brookfield. Now, he's gotten away with just moving his assets into a so-called blind trust. But the only people who are left blind are Canadian voters. We can't see what assets are in the trust, but Mark Carney knows because he put them there. Now, Mark Carney doesn't want to talk about any of that. That's why as soon as the media started asking him tough questions about it, he suspended his campaign and rushed back to Ottawa. He's been hiding from the public for 3 straight days now. He's hiding from scrutiny over the fact that he's already the most conflicted and compromised Prime Minister in Canadian history. From revelations about his cozy relationship with the Chinese government, cash stashed in offshore tax havens, and his history of lobbying governments he's supposed to be advising to benefit his employers and his own financial interests. This is the Prime Minister who leads a Liberal Party that's made up of ministers and caucus members who are responsible for the series of ethical scandals that have tarnished Canadians' confidence in our democratic institutions, like the $60 million Arrive scam, the $1 billion Green Slush Fund, the Canada Student Service Grant, where they tried to give $1 billion to Liberal insiders at the We organization. Mark Carney doesn't want you to think about any of that. That 87% of the cabinet that he appointed were the same cabinet ministers that advised Justin Trudeau. He's running on one election promise only, that he can deal with Trump. So how's that going? 2 weeks ago, he said that he made progress with Trump. Last week, he said that, quote, he can handle Trump, end quote. That's an actual quote from him. But there's no evidence whatsoever that Mark Carney can control or influence anything that Donald Trump does. The fact is that while the rest of the world is getting pauses on Trump's tariffs, there are more tariffs on Canada today than when Mark Carney became Prime Minister. Now, that's Mark Carney's actual record of dealing with Trump. He can't hide from that record any more than he can hide from his own conflicts and Liberal record of broken promises. After the lost Liberal decade, with costs and crime up, and our economy down and under America's thumb, and with Liberal insiders profiting off their government's decision, it's clear that the Liberals don't deserve a 4th term. It's time to put Canada first for a change, with a new Conservative government that will axe taxes, will build homes, unleash resources, stop crime, and bring home jobs, to stand up to Trump from a position of strength. Pierre Poilievre is the only one who can bring that change to Canada. Now, here to tell you more about our plan, I have the pleasure of introducing the only man who can stop Mark Carney, the leader of Canada's first Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre.
And yeah, Carney is still kind of out of sight today. I don't have any video to share with you. Nothing I've found. No rally, no speech, no news conference that I'm aware of.
Thanks, Michael. Great job. Merci beaucoup, Michael. Merci tout le monde d'être ici aujourd'hui. Quelle belle journée pour être ici avec nos candidats Dean White, Paul Desornans et Ryan Telford, ainsi que Michael Barrett, notre porte-parole en matière d'éthique. What a great corruption-busting champion we have in Eastern Ontario with Michael Barrett. Thank you for all your hard work holding this government to account and tirelessly pointing out and exposing Liberal waste and corruption and Mark Carney's unprecedented conflicts of interest. Before I go into what I'm going to announce, let me talk about why I'm going to announce it. The reason that it's important not to have government corruption, conflicts of interest, and rampant waste is because the people always pay the price. When politicians get rich by making everyone else poor, waitresses and welders, truck drivers, and barbers end up paying the price and worse off. That's probably why Mark Carney is in hiding. Mark Carney is hiding again today in the middle of the election campaign he called, so that you can forget that the lost Liberal decade drove the cost of housing and food up and drove your wages and living standards down. The crime and chaos are overtaking our once safe streets. He wants you to forget that Liberal insiders like him have profited richly off of the misery of everyone else. He wants you to forget that Canada has had the worst housing inflation in the G7, the worst economic growth in the G7, the worst household debt in the G7, that $500 billion has left Canada for the Americans because of the economic policies Mr. Carney advised Trudeau to implement. He wants you to forget all of that. But he also wants you to forget that while Canadians were suffering, he and Liberal insiders were getting rich. They were benefiting off of the suffering. This is because of very powerful conflicts of interest that remain in place today and which Mr. Carney refuses to answer for. But let's just chronicle the corruption that we have witnessed in the last 10 years of the Liberals. Prime Minister Trudeau was found twice guilty of violating the Ethics Act, taking illegal vacations and interfering in corporate prosecutions. We know that the Green Slush Fund saw $1 billion largely handed out to government insiders, where the board members who handed out the money were also invested in the companies that got the money. Then there was the Arrive scam, a useless app no one needed that cost hundreds of times more than necessary and in the end didn't work, and no one was held accountable. The amount of money now spent on government contractors has gone up by well over 100% in a decade to over $20 billion. Roughly $1,400 per family is spent in federal taxes to fund consultants. Now, if you think for a second that this Liberal corruption is going to change with a fourth Liberal term headed by Mark Carney, sadly, you'd be exactly wrong. In fact, Mark Carney brings even more conflicts of interest. He's invested in a company that has money stashed away, billions of dollars stashed in overseas tax havens. He has a company that is in debt to the Chinese government-backed bank to the tune of $250 million. His company profited by his personal interventions to get handouts for investments they made in jet fuel and heat pumps. Now, his big solution to the Liberal housing crisis is that he wants the government to build prefabricated tiny homes. Well, his company is invested in prefabricated tiny homes. Clearly, this is not about helping young people own their own home. It's about filling the pockets of his investors and himself. Mr. Carney refuses to tell Canadians what investments he continues to own or even where he pays his taxes. This means that when he's sitting around the cabinet table making decisions, his personal interest will be against Canada's national interest. We need change. Change so you can afford a home. Change so you can afford food. Change so your paycheck rises faster than your cost of living. Change so you have safe streets and crime-free communities again. Change so you can be confident that your government is working for you, not for wealthy insiders or for the politicians who are making the decisions. La raison pour laquelle M. Carney se cache aujourd'hui, c'est parce qu'il veut vous faire oublier.
Let's pull this down until we can get back to the English. I would say, coming back to him now. Here we go. This is putting Carney on the back.
The last time we had a Conservative government, we were on the heels of a lot of other Liberal scandal. Who could forget the sponsorship scandal? We came to office promising an Accountability Act, and we delivered. We passed laws forcing more disclosure of government information, banning conflicts of interest, cracking down on insiders, setting up the lobbyist registry so that we knew who was paid to influence government decisions. And it worked for a while until Liberals found loopholes. And we have to give them credit. They're very creative. As much as we tried to stomp out all the Liberal corruption, they went to work to find ways around the rules. So I'm announcing today that a new Conservative government will bring change by introducing the Accountability Act 2.0, designed to remove the loopholes that Mr. Carney and the Liberals are using to avoid accountability for themselves and for their party. We're going to put Canadians first for a change. We're going to have an accountable government for a change. We're going to have politicians and leaders who work for you, for your affordable home and food, for your safe street, for your paycheck, for a change. So let me lay out some of the elements of this plan. First, we will ban shadow lobbying. Now, shadow lobbying is when professional VIPs with big shot titles call themselves advisors so that they can influence government decisions to profit themselves, but then get around lobbying rules. And Mr. Carney's been famous for this. He bragged that he lobbied the British government to increase jet fuel prices while his company invested in the jet fuel. He brags that he influenced governments to subsidize heat pumps while his company invests in heat pumps. He says that he's going to reverse the Liberal housing crisis by having the government build prefab tiny homes. Well, his company is invested in prefab tiny homes. Using a fake title of advisor to push policies that enrich yourself while impoverishing everyone else is an unacceptable conflict of interest, and it is nothing more than glorified corporate lobbying that is unregistered. We have a lobbyist registry which is meant to allow Canadians to know who is taking money to influence government decisions. We cannot allow high-priced corporate insiders like Mark Carney to go around those rules. And so, henceforth, we will eliminate the lobbying loophole and require anyone who's acting as an advisor to government officials to declare themselves and register as a lobbyist whenever they are advising on matters that touch upon their financial interests or that of their company. This would have required Mr. Carney register as a lobbyist when he was talking about anything that would have profited his corporate interests at Brookfield. Second, we will stop politicians from profiting off their own decisions. Ministers should not be involved in setting policies that enrich themselves or their families without accountability. We should not allow people to use their political power in government to make decisions that will advantage themselves above and beyond the public interest. Let me explain the problem. There is a section in the Ethics Act right now that allows a politician to make a decision that benefits him or his family if it benefits other people as well. Now, the reason that was set up was so that, for example, Jim Flaherty benefited by cutting the GST because his consumer purchases were a little more affordable. But, of course, everybody benefited. We didn't want to declare that to be a conflict of interest. But it's been widely over-interpreted to allow, for example, Bill Morneau to make policies that affect insurance plans just because there are multiple companies that benefit from it and not just his. And so we will put in place a stricter test that will ban politicians, particularly ministers, from any involvement in decisions that would benefit their interests more than the public interest. They would also have to declare these interests publicly and widely so that everyone knows. Third, we'll increase the fines for ethics violations to $10,000. No more slaps on the wrist. 4, tax transparency. Anyone running for office will have to disclose where they paid taxes for the last 7 years. In which country? Interestingly, one reporter has contacted Mr. Carney's campaign and said, have you been paying taxes in Canada personally? And his campaign refuses to answer that question. Seems like a pretty basic question. He's the Prime Minister of Canada, and he can't tell a journalist whether he pays taxes in Canada, whether he personally pays the same taxes that he charges everyone else? This is, I've never seen something like this in my life. And then you have his corporate interests, where we know he has cash stashed in Bermuda, in the Caymans, and other of the most flagrant offshore tax havens. So while he was advising Justin Trudeau to raise your taxes, he was dodging his. He still has those conflicts in place. How would you ever trust him to reform the tax system to make it fairer when he benefits from dodging his bills? Waitresses, truck drivers, manual laborers have to pay a much higher tax rate than Mark Carney's company, and he remains in that conflict. So he should have to reveal where he's paid his tax for the last 7 years. 5th, we'll require cabinet ministers to divest fully from tax havens and disclose their assets to the Office of the Ethics Commissioner with penalties for non-compliance. No more so-called blind trusts that are only blind to the public. What does this mean? It means that when you're going into cabinet, including becoming Prime Minister, you would actually have to sell all the assets, turn it into cash, hand that cash over to a trustee who would then invest it from scratch, unbeknownst to you, so that you would not have any ability to know what interests you have that go against the public interest. Right now, Mr. Carney has handed over his Brookfield investments knowing they cannot be sold. So he knows exactly what he owns, but no one else does. And as a result, there is no blind trust when you know what's inside that trust. It is blind only to the public. He should have to sell and liquidate these investments and then have the cash reinvested without his knowledge, so that he could not possibly act in his own interest and against the Canadian interest. 6th, we'll require party leaders to disclose their assets within 30 days of becoming leader, or require the Prime Minister to divest their assets within 30 days of taking that job. Le dernier gouvernement conservateur sur lequel j'ai servi a introduit la loi fédérale sur la responsabilité pour mettre fin à la corruption libérale qui nous a apporté le scandale des commandites. J'étais le secrétaire parlementaire, en passant, qui a fait adopter cette loi au comité. Mais dès que les libéraux sont retournés au pouvoir, ils ont trouvé de nouvelles failles à exploiter et de nouveaux moyens d'échapper à cette loi. C'est pourquoi un nouveau gouvernement conservateur va présenter une nouvelle loi, la loi de responsabilité 2.0. Un plan pour mettre fin à la corruption au sein du gouvernement, éliminer les échappatoires qui profitent aux initiés comme Mark Carney et mettre le Canada d'abord pour faire changement. Voici comment. Premièrement, on va interdire le lobbying fantôme. Tous ceux qui conseillent directement ou indirectement le gouvernement et qui sont susceptibles d'en tirer un avantage financier, comme l'a fait Carney lorsqu'il conseillait Justin Trudeau pendant les 5 dernières années, doivent enregistrer en tant que lobbyistes sans aucune exception. Deuxièmement, on va interdire aux hommes politiques de prendre des décisions qui les enrichissent, eux ou leurs familles. On va exiger l'approbation du commissaire à l'éthique ainsi que la divulgation publique de tous les intérêts personnels. La fonction publique doit être au service de la population. Elle ne doit pas être une source de profit. Donc, dans plusieurs cas, M. Carney profite des mauvaises décisions. L'inflation.
And let's just get to some English. Moment. Here we go. Here are the questions.
Serious safety concern and help restore a sense of security in our community.
Thank you very much. It's Iqbal, you said?
Yes, Iqbal Ottawa.
Well, thank you, Mr. Atwal. I really appreciate your question. And what part of town do you live in, if you don't mind my asking?
I'm in Ottawa.
What part of Ottawa are you in?
It's Ottawa near Bayshore.
Bayshore, okay, yes. These used to be really safe neighborhoods. The reason I asked, I lived in Barhaven, not too far from Bayshore. And I remember, when I lived there, you could basically leave your door unlocked. It was so safe. But after the lost Liberal decade of catch and release, hug-a-thug laws, crime is raging out of control. Liberal law C-75 requires judges release accused offenders, often for the 60th or 70th time, at the earliest opportunity and under the least onerous conditions. This means that a tiny group of reoffenders are able to totally tear apart our communities with no consequences whatsoever. They have house arrest under Liberal law C-5, which allows offenders who've been convicted to just sit in their living room and promise not to go outside. Well, of course, they walk out the door and reoffend. These insane Liberal crime policies are endangering our people. We cannot risk a fourth Liberal term of rampaging crime. We need a change with a new Conservative government that will lock up criminals and bring home safety. And this is my plan to do it. I will repeal Liberal law C-75 to end catch and release bail. I will repeal C-5, the house arrest, Liberal house arrest law. We will bring in a 3 strikes you're out law, which says that anyone convicted of 3 serious offenses will automatically be ineligible for bail, parole, probation, or house arrest for the rest of their lives. They will serve a minimum of 10 years and a maximum of life and will only get out of jail if they have an impeccable record of clean drug tests, good behavior, and learning an employable skill. We will also secure our borders with high-powered scanners that look into shipping containers to stop drugs, guns, and stolen cars. We will hire 2,000 more frontline CBSA officers who can stop the illegal importations. And we will ban hard drugs, shut down taxpayer-funded drug consumption sites, and invest in treating 50,000 Canadians to defeat addiction and bring our loved ones home drug-free. We need a change to bring home safe streets, and only Conservatives will do it. Thank you.
En français.
Merci beaucoup de votre question, M. Atwal. Les communautés que vous décrivez étaient très, très sécuritaires auparavant. Mais maintenant, c'est le chaos total à cause des libérations automatiques des criminels que les libéraux ont mis en place avec la loi.
Okay, let's get to some English. Coming back.
Avec des scanners de boîtes de conteneurs, plus d'agents frontaliers et moins de trafiquants d'armes et de drogue. C'est comme ça qu'on va renverser les décennies perdues de criminalité que les libéraux ont apportées et amener un vrai changement pour mettre la sécurité d'abord.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Marco Vigliati, iPolitics. Once again, we're seeing an announcement, an ethics announcement focused on, Mark Carney overtly. But one thing we really haven't heard so far during this campaign is your plan to deal with the threat the threat foreign interference poses to our institutions and our election integrity. Obviously, a major focus of the previous parliament. We've even seen during this campaign questions raised about certain candidates' close ties to foreign governments. But we really haven't heard too much on your end what you would do differently other than scolding the Liberals for not putting in place the foreign agent registry fast enough. So I'm just wondering, let's maybe just focus on nomination races, for example, a known soft spot for this activity. Would you commit to bringing those races under the umbrella of the Canada Elections Act? And if you won't commit to doing that, can you give Canadians any assurances that you would take foreign interference serious enough, even if that means reducing the autonomy political parties like the one you lead have over things like nomination races?
We will. I can assure you that we will take foreign interference seriously. After the lost Liberal decade, Canada has become a playground to foreign interference. And the Liberals have benefited from interference by Beijing in 2 consecutive elections. Beijing has now interfered in both the Liberal leadership race to help Mark Carney and again in the general election to help Mr. Carney. Mr. Carney learned of a Liberal candidate on his roster that was telling people to send his Conservative opponent back over to China on a bounty where he would have been imprisoned or killed, and Mr. Carney refused to get rid of that candidate. Well, it was actually the candidate that finally left after we found out that the RCMP was involved. I'm very worried about the foreign interference that could result from the fact that Mr. Carney's company, which he still invests in, owes $250 million to the Chinese government. So one of the things we're going to do to stop foreign interference is require politicians divest their interests, sell them, not just put them in a fake blind trust, so they no longer have their financial strings attached to a hostile foreign government. And yes, I have complained that they have not set up the foreign interference registry. You will recall that our party put partisanship aside and we rushed through the foreign interference law. I sent out my brilliant foreign affairs critic, Michael Chong. He walked in front of all of you. He announced we would fast-track the passage. And the reason was because we wanted that foreign agent registry in place by the time the election happened. The Liberals said they would do that, and here we are. And now we don't know who are the paid actors operating on behalf of foreign governments. So we need a new Conservative government that will end the foreign interference, stand up for the integrity of our democracy, and protect our people from foreign dangers. For a change.
En français.
Merci beaucoup. Oui, je vais prendre l'ingérence étrangère au sérieux.
Again, let's skip to the English. One moment.
Qu'ils vont faire la bonne décision.
Thank you. In English.
Thank you very much for the question. The choice that Canadians will have to make is, after a lost Liberal decade, where costs and crime are skyrocketing and our economy is falling under the American thumb, are we going to elect them to the Liberals to a 4th term and have more of the same? Or is it time for a change with a new Conservative government that will axe taxes, greenlight home building, resource development, bring home our jobs so we can stand on our own 2 feet for a change? Look, it's the same Liberal gang, same Liberal ministers, same Liberal MPs, same Liberal advisors making the same Liberal promises that got us into this mess over the last decade. Canadians will have to decide if they can afford a 4th term. Change means hope. Change means affordable food. Change means affordable homes. Change means safe streets. Change means, well, change in your pocket.
Thank you. We'll now go to the final question.
Colton Prale, CTV.
Yes, sir.
In 2 weeks, whoever forms government is going to face critical American trade negotiations. Who would you lead? Who would you have lead your team in those negotiations?
Well, we'll be announcing our foreign minister and our cabinet after the election. But But, well, I've never seen a politician announce his cabinet before he gets elected. So that would be pretty presumptuous to start naming a cabinet before the election is over. We have a strong team of people. You look at our shadow cabinet, we have a phenomenal group that have shown tremendous competence and readiness. And look, the reality is that Mark Carney is running on a false promise. He claimed that he'd made progress with Donald Trump in his phone call, and 2 days, 3 days later, we got hit with more tariffs. And then when the rest of the world got a pause on tariffs, Mr. Carney did not secure that. Now, I'm not blaming him for that. The blame rests with Donald Trump for wrong-headed tariffs. What I'm taking issue with is making false promises. We need to focus on what we can control, which is to say, reverse the disastrous economic policies that Mark Carney advised Justin Trudeau to put in place over the lost Liberal decade. Policies that drove investment out, wages down, costs up, and weakened our country. We cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a new Conservative government that will bring real change. Change so you can afford food, homes, change so that your paycheck goes up faster than your cost of living, change so you have safe streets. Thank you.
En français.
Merci beaucoup. Le choix pour les Canadiens sur la question des États-Unis, c'est qu'est-ce qu'on va faire sur les enjeux qu'on peut contrôler? On peut contrôler ce que nous faisons ici. Et ce qui...
Again, we'll skip ahead here to English. And I think actually we are done. Yeah. We are done. We finished in French. Okay. Let's take a little break and we'll come right back.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
So, after listening to that, I have a couple of things to say in response. It all sounds fine. What I want to know is Pierre Poilievre going to hold himself and his MPs, his Conservative MPs, to the same standard that he's demanding of Mark Carney? He stood there tonight and demanded that Mark Carney liquidate all of his assets, then take the cash, turn it over to some sort of financial manager to then have those funds reinvested into things that he wouldn't even know where the money was being invested, so that it would be in a true portfolio that he doesn't have access to or any knowledge of. So my question is, has Pierre Poilievre done that himself? I don't think so. I don't think any of his MPs have. I bet you there's not one sitting member of parliament. Well, I don't think any of them have done that. Who the heck has ever done that? So as I look up and I have done this, trying to figure out what assets Pierre Poilievre has, it isn't entirely clear what he has either. Now, he has disclosed his investments to the Ethics Commissioner as required under the Conflict of Interest Code for MPs. His most recent disclosure came this month and showed investments in exchange traded funds, or ETFs. He previously held international ETFs like iShares, MSCI Singapore, and Switzerland. There's a tax haven for you. But after, U.S. tariff threats, he sold those and shifted to Canadian-focused ETFs, including Vanguard, FTSE, Canada Index ETF, Purpose Bitcoin ETF, and another Vanguard fund. One of those Vanguard FTSE holds Brookfield Corporation. So he has assets in Brookfield himself, which he is criticizing Mark Carney over due to Carney's past role there. And then beyond investments, there's no specific details on real estate or other personal assets confirmed in public records. I don't know, man. He's sitting there criticizing Carney for his Brookfield connections, and it looks like Poilievre himself has at least some financial interests in Brookfield himself. You can't make this stuff up. On blind trusts, there's no definitive evidence that Poilievre has placed his assets in one. MPs like Poilievre aren't required to use blind trusts unless they become cabinet ministers or prime minister. And that's because of the way the Conflict of Interest Act is currently written. And so Carney has actually followed all the rules to this point. But as I said some time ago, it's not that he has broken any laws or any rules. It's that the rules maybe need to be tightened up, which is something I've said for a long time. And that's really what Poilievre is addressing here, legitimately, I think, by saying that he's going to strengthen the Accountability Act with Accountability Act 2.0. But the question is, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Is Poilievre going to do exactly the same thing that he's demanding of Mark Carney? Now, I don't know exactly. It's not really clear what Poilievre has done with his investments or if he's got them all. I don't know. Because there is a bit of a lack of transparency for all of these ministers, really, because the requirements under the Ethics Act only goes so far. They still have some rights to privacy when it comes to their investments under the current rules. Question is, how much transparency should be required of a member of parliament? Now, Poilievre has pushed for stricter rules, criticizing Carney for not disclosing assets before his blind trust was set up. He's proposed amending the conflict now of the Conflict of Interest Act to require party leadership candidates to disclose assets within 30 days to sell conflict-prone assets, arguing Carney's trust exploits a loophole. However, Poilievre hasn't held himself to that standard, as his investments remain actively managed, not liquidated or blindly reinvested per available data. So he too has met the rules. He's met the current MP disclosure rules, but not the stricter ones that he's advocating for Carney. So I don't know. I'll say this too. Carney is on this front not running an effective campaign. He's sitting back now. He is clearly hiding because he knows that this is hurting his campaign. So he's trying to avoid the media and avoid questions and further scrutiny. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The Conservatives, Poilievre, they've put Carney on the back foot with all of this questioning. And I would say that his lack of political experience, Carney's lack of political experience, is showing here because he's not sure how to respond to this. I don't think he anticipated this level of attack, but he should have. And in fact, I think it's going to get even more heated in the days ahead. So he better learn quick on the job. But that's why, political experience is a huge asset when you're in a leadership position, as Carney is and Poilievre, and you're in an election campaign. You need to know how to deal with these things, and you need experienced political people around you. I am surprised, given the money, the depth of experience that they have within the Liberal Party politically, that they're not coming out with a stronger position and defense against this stuff. It's left me scratching my head just a little bit. Not an effective rebuttal here, and no rebuttal at all, actually, from Carney at all today. And in such a short span of time, you would think that these politicians, Carney especially, right, that they would want to make the most of every waking hour with campaign momentum. And the momentum now is clearly on the conservative side because Carney is MIA, missing in action, and has been for a couple of days now. I don't think he can afford this. I think that he has been out in front in the polls, but the conservatives have definitely, made up for lost ground in the past couple of days. And while Carney, I think, is sitting back thinking that he needs to minimize the damage from these attacks by taking a low profile or no profile for a couple of days, saying that he went to Ottawa to meet with, his advisory committee or whatever it was there yesterday or the day before on the Trump tariffs. Excuse me, the strategy not really going to work because he doesn't have enough time. The attacks are not going to stop, and he's going to have to face the music one way or another. But I'll say this, if I, were advising Carney, and here's a little free advice, and I don't mean to offer you advice, but, you should come out swinging and just call out the hypocrisy, because all these politicians, regardless of political stripe, they're all invested in all kinds of, real estate, stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, you name it. Like they've all got it. So if you're going to that's what I would do. I'd say, okay, I'll do it if you do it. Let's do it tomorrow. We'll sell it all and have it reinvested blindly. But you first, pal. Just saying. I'm not, and you can't say that I'm like, no, Rick, now you're a liberal. No, I'm saying you have to hold everybody to the same standard. And I think we do need a higher standard, more, and I'm editorializing, but I just think that all these politicians need to be more transparent about what their assets are. I don't think there's any question that we need that. And then with this foreign influence stuff, a lot of this is shadowy. Allegations, unnamed MPs. I don't like it. But I also know that there is a spin that is accompanying this, that is, I think, putting a little bit of a distorted perspective on it. And even here, I wonder, how much foreign influence is helping Pierre Poilievre? Not just China, maybe from the United States. How much foreign influence from the U.S. is Poilievre benefiting from, and the conservatives, all these conservative politicians, or maybe the liberals? It's strange to see the reaction we're getting from some of these conservative streamers and influencers and supporters, and even some people in the chat some nights, because it's like a switch was flipped when Trump came out and said that he'd rather deal with Mark Carney, a liberal. He said, I'd rather deal with a liberal. And people took that as an endorsement for Carney. And then suddenly Trump became this sort of hybrid villain where people who are supportive on the conservative side now who were very supportive of Trump before suddenly didn't like Trump because he's supporting Carney and on the tariffs, but they actually still defend Trump, except when this thing, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's just environmentalists setting Teslas on fire. That's what it comes down to. Everything's flipped upside down, and we're all fighting in the streets as a result. Speaking of fighting in the streets and things turned upside down, big protests there in Ottawa yesterday, pro-Palestinian protests, and just show you kind of some fallout from that today. If I can find my tabs. Where'd you go? Here we go. Okay. So yes, let's just do a little Twitter scroll. And I'm sure that a lot of you have probably been tracking some of this stuff on social media. And I know this upsets a lot of people, but these are protests and everybody has a right to protest. Here's Canadian Sikhs are rising against Khalistani terrorism from Canadian soil. This guy says this is a real welcome development and a setback to Pakistan and its foreign interference in Canada. Oh, so now we're worried about Pakistan foreign interference. Well, it's probably there. The fear of Sikhs was visible among Khalistani extremists, specifically.
Indian government, Murdabad! Face of terror! Modi! Face of terror! Modi! Face of terror! Modi! Face of terror! Modi! Modi! Who killed Canadian citizens? Indian government! Who killed Canadian citizens? Indian government! Who killed Canadian citizens? Indian government! Who killed...
Okay. This was... Well, first I'll show you this. Here's some video, aerial footage of the protests yesterday, the pro-Palestine in Ottawa.
Right now! Go right now! Say it loud and shake the ground! Say it loud and shake.
And then this was I believe a Tim Horton yesterday. Let's pick this up here.
This is Canada. This is a Tim Hortons.
Free Canada.
Yeah, this is Canada. That's what she says. This is Canada. Yeah. Let's take a little break. We're going to come back and we'll talk about this police officer that was set on fire in Vancouver.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow. may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so let me just first we're going to show you this media release that came out from Vancouver police. We had a police officer set on fire. Two officers actually involved. One was set on fire, and the other had his uniform singed. And both, I guess, are now at home, recovering as a result of this. The one officer not actually injured. The other one, though, did sustain injuries as a result. Here's the media release from Vancouver PD. Two Vancouver police officers are recovering after they were set on fire by a man on the downtown east side. The officers were doing foot patrols on East Hastings and Carroll Streets Thursday night when they attempted to detain a man for jaywalking. The suspect, who is wanted BC-wide for 10 different offenses, Canada-wide warrant actually, tried to run away, but the officers pursued him as they were taking the suspect into custody. It's believed the man used a flammable substance to set the officers' uniforms on fire, then continued to flee. The officers, who were deployed as part of VPD's task force barrage, radioed for assistance and were able to put out the fires themselves. Additional VPD officers responded, and the suspect was taken into custody a short distance away. One officer was treated by paramedics and is currently recovering at home. The second officer did not sustain physical injuries. The suspect, a 40-year-old Vancouver man, received treatment at hospital for burns and is currently in jail. VPD is recommending multiple new charges, including assaulting a police officer with a weapon, obstructing a police officer, and breaching a release order. More than 35 VPD officers have been assaulted on duty since the beginning of 2025, a 25% increase over the same period last year. Direct from Vancouver police. And we have video and a still image here, but I'll show you the video. Here. So this is surveillance video capturing the incident.
Video captures the moment a police officer was intentionally set on fire during an arrest. The fire starts off the video surveillance to the right. Then the officer appears with flames engulfing their lower body. As they try to run away, another officer runs in right before the fire erupts. Before this, Vancouver police say a suspect tried to run from the officers. The suspect was wanted Canada-wide for 10 offenses. Police believe he used a flammable substance to set the officer's uniform on fire and then ran.
And it's my understanding from the information available tonight that this has never happened in Vancouver before. Never before has a police officer in Vancouver being set on fire.
40-year-old Vancouver man was arrested. He is in jail and has been treated for burns. If approved by Crown, he will be facing charges of assaulting a police officer with a weapon, obstructing a police officer, and breaching a release order. As for the officer, they are recovering at home, and the other officer does not have any physical injuries. These officers were working for a task force that is focusing on dismantling organized crime and targeting criminals in the downtown east side. 35 Vancouver police officers have been assaulted this year.
So, pretty scary stuff, and it shows you how violent things can get on the streets and what police officers are forced to deal with, really, day to day to day. And a lot of questions swirling around this story. Some people outraged, especially police internally, wondering why was this guy out on bail anyway, and why was he on the streets? The hug-a-thug narrative from Poilievre. There's there's validity to those concerns. Speaking of things being set on fire, there's this story out of the US of A. From Pennsylvania. Suspect arrested in alleged arson at Pennsylvania Governor Shapiro's residence. This is an update. And of course, the reason we brought you that other story tonight, too, with the most latest information, is because the charges have been laid against that that person in conjunction with the officer being set on fire. And here, this is a suspect is in custody in connection with the overnight fire at the governor's residence in Pennsylvania that is being investigated as arson. Pennsylvania State Police announced during a press conference today, this from the ABC website, and Governor Josh Shapiro and his family were in the residence at the time of the fire, which was reported at about 2 a.m. Eastern time. They were evacuated safely and were not injured, according to state police. The suspect has been identified as 38-year-old Cody Balmer of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Dauphin County DA Fran Chardo said at the news conference today. Photo there. Chardo says, charges set to be filed today will include attempted murder, terrorism, aggravated arson, and aggravated assault against an enumerated person. Shapiro said during the press conference, again, that the attack was targeted. Quote, we do know that this attack was targeted. This type of violence is not okay, the governor said, and I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other, directed at one particular party or another, he added. So here, let me just dip out of this. I'm going to, again, I need to just make an adjustment here. So let me run this and I'll be right back.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Okay, so we're going to go to the news conference just to get a little bit of the statement from the governor himself on his residence being set on fire. Pretty serious. Here we go.
By the bondage that someone attempts to put on me by attacking us as they did
Says he refused to be
last night.
trapped by the
I
bondage of
refuse
someone who attacks.
to let anyone who had evil intentions like that stop me from doing the work that I love, stop me from being a leader of this Commonwealth and looking out for all Pennsylvanians. I will not be deterred in my work, and I will not be afraid to do that work.
Governor, who all was in the house at the time, and how is your family feeling right now?
I'm not going to get into my family and who was in the house. I will tell you that obviously, you know, when you get woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning with a banging on the door from brave Pennsylvania State Police telling you have to immediately evacuate, that's jarring, especially for children. They're doing okay now. They're all together. And as I said, shortly here, we're going to celebrate our second Seder together. We're going to have more family time. And I trust that Laura and I will make sure our kids get through this well and listen to them, be there for their emotional needs, be there for their mental health support, our mental health support, and making sure that everybody is able to get through this and continue on with our lives. Me doing the important work I'm doing, my wife, our First Lady, doing the important work they're doing, and our kids being normal kids doing what they do.
Governor, was there any question from a security standpoint, any discussion?
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear the beginning of your
Governor,
question.
any question from a security standpoint, any discussions about having you come back to the scene so soon? And was this something you
I'm
wanted
not
to
going
do?
to get into
sort of-
my security. I've total confidence in the Pennsylvania State Police to keep us safe.
As far as the suspect in custody goes, where are we at right now in terms of warrants for the residents or speaking to family members associated with the suspect? How is that going to play?
Okay. We're going to just move along. Yeah, pretty scary stuff. Trump tariffs are scary too. I'll tell you that. And I don't think it's going, it's not going. I don't think well for the United States, honestly, or anybody. There's nobody really winning on this except maybe China. China, yesterday I said Trump's tariff policy is really turning out to be a pro-China policy because it's cast the United States in a negative light around the world. It's isolating the U.S. It is also pushing China into the open arms of other nations who are looking to do more trade with China now because of what the United States is doing. In fact, before I even get into the damage control that the Trump administration or regime has initiated on the Sunday talk show circuit, news talk show circuit, I'm gonna run this from this is an American who produces. They're obviously in some sort of a business where they manufacture industrial equipment of some kind, and he explains right here why even as a business in the United States, he doesn't want to do business in the United States. And he says it's because Americans have become basically a bunch of big babies. Not my words, his.
As a business owner who imports steel products from China, here's my 2 cents on steel tariffs. We make these, and this is the insane part about, why we do and why like all American companies are making stuff in China versus America. In short, I mean, if you want to skip this video, what it's about is Americans are a bunch of babies and they're hard to work with. So we make these boxes, they're self-checkout kiosks in China, manufactured, powder coated, packaged, shipped. This is, I think, before shipping, I'm probably $250 into this box. We send this design that we made to, we've been making these for like 6 years, like no problems. And then we send, tariffs got a little scary, so we send the designs to a bunch of companies in America. And all I'm getting are these emails about, well, how many are you going to make? If you're not going to make 500 at a time, we can't work with you. And then maybe they can, they'll say, we'll make it. It's a huge pain in the ass for us, but we'll do it. But then, they want like $1,000 or $1,200, not powder coated, not packaged, not shipped. And to give you an example, I mean, we get these custom styrofoam, pieces that we put that are molded around, the front of this that, the other piece of styrofoam fits this perfect. And so they're not powder coating them. They're telling us you got to come get them and take them to a powder coater, and we're not going to help you with that. Or so basically with a whole bunch of kicking and screaming, I can get an American company to make this for maybe $1,200, not powder coated, no packaging, no shipping. And I get this for like $250 in China. And then China says, like, how many do you want? You want 5 pieces? You want 100? You want 500? We don't care. And then but the biggest thing I'm running into with American companies is that they're coming back and they're just saying, like, well, how are we supposed to make this? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I gave you CAD designs. Like, look at the CAD designs. And they're like, but we don't know if, you know, you're not telling us if we should weld this corner on here. And then they're sending me back these pictures of, like, the thing kind of taken apart. And they're like, you need to tell us, like, that you want this corner welded here and then that you want this piece bent and what. And I'm like, I'm not a metal shop, man. We're a software development company. Like,
that's right.
I have no idea what equipment you have and how, if you're going to laser cut a piece first and then you bend it and then you weld it to this other piece. Like, that's not my job. You're the metal shop. That's your job. You should know. I should give you a CAD design. You should know. Like, okay, we see what you're doing here. We'll cut it up our own way and we'll make it with the equipment that we have and the know-how that we have. Like, we'll get it done. Because that's, I mean, basically that's the difference. I give this to China and they say no problem. And then 6 weeks later, I have these beautiful boxes in my hands for 1/10 of the price of America. And so even if the tariffs end up being the original 25% tariff plus the 10% that he just added, plus another 25% on steel products, I'm probably still going to make them in China because I don't have to deal with Americans. And on top of all that, like, you know, you add another 60% to what I'm paying, I bet they're still cheaper to do in China with 1,000,000 times less headache. Like, I hate working with American companies so much. There are no words for me to describe how horrible of an experience it is working with American companies, especially in the steel industry. So his whole idea of, like, we're going to bring all these jobs back to America, like, he would probably have to put a 200% tariff on all things from China for me to stop making these in China. Because I cannot find, and like I said, I've been doing this for 6 years, I cannot find a single American company that has been a breeze to work with. They've all been a fucking nightmare. And every single company I've ever talked to in China has just been, like, so easy to work with. Just, they'll tell you if they can do it or not, and then if they can't, they'll send you to their friend that does it, and they'll be like, these guys have the equipment, they can do it for you. So much easier. I can't, yeah. I mean, basically, all that these things are doing is I'm going to pay more for this. I'm going to raise my prices. My customers are going to pay more for this. They're going to raise their prices. The end user of this system is going to pay more. All of us are going to pay more because the Grand Cheeto is an idiot.
That's it. That is it. That's the Donald Trump economic plan, the grand tariff plan. And look at what we're getting now. China's factory tsunami threatens to swamp U.S. industry. This is China's response to Donald Trump's tariffs. Donald Trump has announced 125% tariff on all Chinese imports, calling it a necessary move to shield American manufacturers from an onslaught of cheap goods flooding in from China. Yeah, because America is not competitive when it comes to a lot of these kinds of products, especially labor-intensive products. The United States just isn't. That's what tariffs are always are often used for, is to protect non-competitive businesses, including, I might add, the U.S. steel industry, which is not competitive. And I'll say this too about the steel industry in the U.S. Trump had tariffs at about the same level they're at right now on Canadian steel and aluminum during his first go round as president. So the tariffs that are in place right now, even as imposed with Mark Carney as the prime minister, they were in place at that level previously. And the Canadian steel industry still survived. But the bigger point here is that even as those tariffs were in place, I don't have a lot of sympathy, honestly. I do for the workers, But I don't have much sympathy for the people who own those companies, because what did they do when they were enjoying that level of protectionism the last time around? Did they invest in their companies? No. No, they didn't. That's why if you go over and look at, some of the biggest US steel producers, some of their ovens are over a century old. Unfreaking believable. Over in the UK as well. They have not really taken steps to make sure that their steel industry has remained robust, resilient, competitive. And that's why you're looking tonight at the UK possibly taking over, nationalizing the remains of their steel industry as a national security issue, because China, through ownership of their last steel ovens, as I understand it, I became aware of this story just within the last 2 days. That they were going to they were talking about shutting these ovens down completely, and if that had happened, the steel inside would have solidified and it would have destroyed them, and that would have been the end of the UK steel industry. So the government stepped in with emergency provisions to make sure that that didn't happen. They're calling it actually an assault on national security over there, and they've taken emergency steps to make sure that what is left of their steel industry remains in place, because a country does need, like the UK, they do need a steel industry to make sure that they can move forward in a proper manner into the future. So they have steel to build things like rail lines, supply their industry and their defense industry as well, in case they can't get the steel they need imported, especially if they go to war with another nation like China that produces a lot of steel, among many other things. And right here, it says a $1.9 trillion manufacturing push from China is rattling the global industry, and the United States is stepping up its defenses. U.S. President Donald Trump announced this 125% tariff on Chinese imports, calling it a necessary move to shield American manufacturers from an onslaught of cheap goods flooding in from China. The hike up from the previously declared 104% comes as part of Trump's tariff strategy, which includes a 90-day pause on duties for most other countries. But he's not doing it for China, because China is, of course, very aggressive. And they also have this massive advantage now on the manufacturing side, because again, how can I don't have a lot of sympathy for these big US companies, multinational companies, really, including Canadians, who have outsourced all this production, all this manufacturing, all these jobs to low-wage countries. That's how all of this started, really largely back in the 1970s, because these companies were like, well, let's export the manufacturing and then import all the products so that people here can buy them for less money. We'll make more profits, but the people here over time lose their jobs. It's hollowed out the middle class. It's been an economic strategy that for a while, yeah, it certainly has worked, but the United States didn't do enough to protect its manufacturing base and the jobs, especially the middle class jobs. And over time, we got to the point as early as the 1980s when we started to ship out even automotive jobs, manufacturing jobs, those higher paying union style jobs that paid, $20, $30, $40, even $50 an hour. That stuff got exported. The unions didn't help in many cases, because even as those jobs were being shipped out overseas, they held the line, if you will, on their demands during contract talks. And these industries have become largely more and more or less and less competitive. And that's the big problem. China is eating your lunch because of these policies, which, if they'd been handled in a fairer way, with more vision toward the future instead of short-sighted profit objectives by these big corporations, we wouldn't be in this position right now, and we'd have more balanced trade, in my view. But we've seen the jobs exported, because why? Greed. It's really that simple. And so people here, more and more people end up on welfare and pay for their stuff with welfare money. It's financed over time. You know what's going on. That stuff's all pretty simple. The solutions, not so simple. And the tariffs are not the solution. Not like this, because China holds too many cards, Donald. Yeah. Now they have too much power. What are you going to do? And I talked last night about Richard Nixon and him going to China back in the 1970s. And that was really the start of a lot of this, because Nixon at the time was, I think, on the right track, reaching out to China. And again, me editorializing here, giving a little bit of historical perspective. Yeah, at the time, reach out to China in an effort to seek a lasting peace, and also to form more of a better trading relationship with China, to isolate Russia more, to kind of push those two powers apart, knowing that over time with China, because of their massive population, like, I don't know, 1.9 billion people or something like that, that over time they would emerge as a major economic power, especially once we welcomed them into the Western economic system. And it's because of that integration into the Western economic system and capitalism that's allowed China to prosper and grow and become the superpower that it is today. China hasn't lost sight of that. As much as people think that China is, very closely aligned now and tied with Russia, that's pragmatic. That's not entirely, that's not really ideological. So they're reliant on the United States, just like the United States is reliant on China. But more importantly, China is integrated and reliant on the Western economic system. So yeah, they're part of BRICS. That's very true. But even BRICS is integrated to some degree into a great degree into the Western system, the Western financial system. They're just setting it up so that there is some competitiveness or competition now against directly the United States. So Trump is on the wrong track, because you can't isolate yourself and still be the global economic leader. It doesn't work that way. You must lead. So Mark Carney was right when he said the other day, frankly, that if the United States won't lead, Canada will. Now, I don't know if Canada will end up leading. We could. Even as a small nation of only 40 million people, we have the resources here to actually do that. We could. Make no mistake, we have the economic might here to do that. If we stay together as a country, we could lead the world on the economic front if we chose to, as long as the United States didn't invade us. That would be a whole other scenario that I wouldn't even want to think about. But he was right to say that. Now, might seem like to quote Joe Biden, it might be hyperbolic. That's not hyperbole. Well, maybe. I don't think so, though. I think that that was actually true. Whether it's Carney or Poilievre or some other Canadian leader taking us into the future, Canada, and I'm talking about this, Canada as a country, we could lead if the United States, and Trump already has done that. He has conceded the United States' position as the global economic leader. He just doesn't realize he's done it yet. And you're seeing it here just in that story tonight, because that is the power that China has now. You think about this, folks. I'll show you the headline again, and this is not the only media outlet reporting this. Look at what China is threatening to do. A tsunami, a manufacturing tsunami, swamping not just U.S. industry, but the global economy with cheap manufactured goods, because they've taken a lot of the money that they were investing in real estate and other kinds of assets like that, and they've been pumping it in the last few years into the expansion of factories. And that's why companies like BYD, automotive companies, are flooding the world market with electric vehicles. That's what Trump has largely been concerned about. That's what Biden was concerned about. That's why Even here in Canada, we slapped tariffs on Chinese-made vehicles. And take note, who is one of the major investors in BYD over in China? Warren Buffett, American. These are multinational companies. It's not even that they're just Chinese. They're multinational. And Trump better watch out, because the U.S. doesn't hold all the cards, and all you have to do is look back to what World War II was all about. Why was the United States able to insert itself into the Second World War and come out looking as strong as it did and being as strong as it was on the other side of that? Because during World War II, the United States had the manufacturing base here, the industrial capacity to build ships on, at scale. Henry Kaiser, industrialist, he took his manufacturing know-how from the automotive industry, applied that to shipbuilding, made modular ships, basically, just like Carney talks about modular homes, even though Poilievre's downplaying that and turning it into whatever it is. But modular homes are kind of the solution when you need a lot of homes built. That's what Henry Kaiser did with shipbuilding to build up the U.S. naval fleet fast during World War II. That's what they did. They built those things at an unprecedented rate. Never seen ships built so fast. It's because they built them they compartmentalized the production. They had the need, and the necessity was the mother of invention. And Henry Kaiser went out and had basically this department or this company is going to build these, this division is going to build those components, and then they brought them all together and assembled them in shipyards. And it was like an assembly line for giant ships. That's how they got it done. I mean, Americans, when you unleash that innovative, entrepreneurial spirit, there's no stopping America. But protectionism is not what gets you there. Protectionism stifles that kind of innovation and growth. It's not going to, protectionism will not be the solution to Chinese innovation. And we're seeing that even on the AI front, where they're in America now and in Canada too, trying to just throw money at it. But it's going to take more than that. And you're certainly not going to do it with protectionism. And you also need the industrial base too, whether it's automated or fueled and supported by cheap labor, one or the other. You do need an industrial base, because AI is just bits and bytes. It's not real. It's artificial. You still need productive capacity industrially to support any modern economy and any modern society. And today, because of the Trump tariffs are really backfiring, Trump had to backtrack, backpedal, back down on these tariffs again this week. Why? Because they're not working. That's why he announced the pause and exemptions even for some of these goods coming out of China, like electronics and a number of other key manufactured goods. So here's Howard Lutnick over on the ABC Weekend Talk Show this week. Let's hear Lutnick make excuses for their faux pas.
So let's start with that news.
It's my pleasure.
Let's start with that news late Friday, this exemption on electronics, smartphones, laptop computers, and the like. What's the thinking? Why the exemption?
Well, if you remember, over the past couple of months, President Trump has called out pharmaceuticals and semiconductors and autos. He called them sector tariffs, and those are not available for negotiation. They are just going to be part of making sure we reshore the core national security items that need to be made in this country. We need to make medicine in this country. We learned it during COVID. We need to make it in this country. We need to make semiconductors, because if we don't own semiconductors here, remember, virtually all semiconductors are made now in Taiwan and they're finished in China. It's important that we reshore them And so the president is going to come out with his policies on semiconductors and pharmaceuticals. They're going to be outside the reciprocal tariffs. And he was just making sure everyone understood that all of these products are outside the reciprocal tariffs, and they are going to have their own separate way of being considered.
But wait a minute. I'm asking you about the exemption, not about. I mean, the notice that went out Friday night saying that electronics, a wide range of electronics, including smartphones, including components used to make microchips, that these are now exempt from the reciprocal tariffs. Why that move?
Well, remember, those products are going to be part of the semiconductor sectoral tariffs, which are coming. So you're going to see this week, there'll be a register in the Federal Registry. There'll be a notice put out. That is different types of work. So we're going to do that. We did that in autos. The president's going to do it for pharmaceuticals, and he's going to do it for semiconductors. So all those products are going to come under semiconductor.
Oh, no. Blah, blah, blah. The truth is he slapped these massive tariffs on without thinking, then realized afterward that when some people quite rightly pointed out that an iPhone was going to end up costing people like $3,500, and then he realized, oh, well, we can't do that because people won't accept it. You'd have people rioting in the streets because, you know, everybody's addicted to their cell phones. Can you imagine what's going to happen? Every teenage kid would be out for blood. It's like, I have to have the new iPhone, the iPhone 99. If I don't have that, I am going to go into withdrawal because people are addicted to their cell phones. That's why it was like, don't. I guess we can't do it after all. Better do an exemption on Friday before the weekend hits. Otherwise, we're going to have protests in the streets. That's why. Get real. And then he sent his minions out this weekend onto the Sunday news talk show circuit for damage control. That's what's going on. Because they really stepped in it. And now they have to convince the public, oh, no, we're never going to do that anyway. We just, no, you misunderstood. No, we understood perfectly well what's going on. You guys just don't really have a coherent plan. You're just making this crap up as you go along. It's chaotic. And so much so that it really is. This is the other thing. They're not thinking this stuff through because look at this. Tonight, China just cut off rare earth magnets and U.S. factories are sweating. So China just rage quit on this post. So China just rage quit and stopped sending rare earth magnets to the U.S., those tiny but mighty metal pieces that power literally everything. Electric cars, fighter jets, drones, missiles, even your car's steering. Yeah, because a lot of it's like, you don't realize this, but a lot of that stuff, you're turning the steering wheel in these modern cars, there's no steering linkage. It's all electronic. Did you know that? No, not every car, but some of them. Yeah, a lot of cars, it's like drive-by-wire. It goes like, yeah, it feeds sensors, and yeah, you need these magnets for that stuff. Why? Trump dropped a new tariffs. It says China didn't like that. So now they're like, cool story. Enjoy building stuff without our magnets. Here's the wild part. I'm reading from this post. China makes 90% of the world's rare earth magnets and refines 100% of heavy duty ones. Basically, they've got the world supply on lock and they just slammed the door. Detroit panicking. Defense contractors sweating. It's like cutting off Wi-Fi during finals week. Trump took the first swing. China swung back. Now it's high stakes. And nobody wants to blink. Let me just check this. And here's a Trump post. Says, can you see this on the screen? I don't know if you can see this. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So here's Trump saying, nobody is getting off the hook for the unfair trade balances and non-monetary tariff barriers that other countries have used against us, especially not China, which by far treats us the worst. There was no tariff exemption announced on Friday. These products are subject to the existing 20% fentanyl tariffs, and they are just moving to a different tariff bucket. The fake news knows this, but refuses to report it. We are taking a look at semiconductors and the whole electronic supply chain in the upcoming national security tariff investigations. What has been exposed is that we need to make products in the United States and that we will not be held hostage by other countries, especially hostile trading nations like China, which will do everything within its power to disrespect the American people. It's just business, dude. We also cannot let them continue to abuse us on trade like they have for decades. Those days are over. Yeah, those evil Chinese selling us all that really affordable, cheap stuff that keeps getting better in quality every year. The golden age of America, which includes the upcoming tax and regulation cuts, a substantial amount of which was just approved by the House and Senate, will mean more and more better paying jobs. As more and more factories come back more and more automated, making products in our nation and treating other countries, in particular China, the same way that they have treated us. The bottom line is that our country will be bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. We will make America great again. This from a president who is clearly still living in the 1980s in his head. I don't think it'll be that simple. I don't think so. Yeah. Okay, let's take a little break and we'll go to the phones so you guys can chime in on tonight's top news stories of the day. Stay with me.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here's the number. Okay, Mavericks, it's call-in time. Join the conversation. Call 1-647-734-4220. Then enter the PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. Exercise your right to free speech. Call 1-647-734-4220. Then enter the PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. Call 1-647-734-4220. Then enter the PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. Maverick News. Call now. The world is watching and listening to you. Okay, we're back, and you can join the conversation by calling in at 1-647-734-4220. That's 1-647-734-4220. Punch in that PIN number, 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. I'll leave that number scrolling on the bottom of the screen so you can join the call easily just by looking down at the bottom of whatever it is you're viewing this on your laptop, your cell phone, your TV, wherever you're watching from, anywhere in the world, that's the number to call. And we have our first caller of the night on the line. Who's with us tonight?
Well, good evening, Rickster. It's Rimby John Scotty out of Rimby, Alberta, Western Canada. How are you?
Well, I'm okay. It was a beautiful day here in Southern Ontario. What's the weather doing out there? Has spring sprung?
Well, we had a Merry Christmas here the other day, my friend, but yeah, it's getting better. But I just wondered, are you feeling a little better, my friend? There's a bit of a flu going around.
Yeah, I have to confess, I'm not feeling the best today. I was kind of under the weather there for much of the day, and I don't know what it is. I was very dizzy, and I don't know if I picked up a little bit of a bug. Feeling a little bit better right now. I always kind of get more energy when I come on and join the Maverick family on here. I don't know. I just get a little bit of life pumped into me when I come on here. But yeah, I'm not in the best of shape tonight.
Well, anyways, I was thinking about you.
Well, thank
you. And there's something going around, my friend. I think it's a spring cold or flu, because I've got friends out here in Alberta with it. It's in Kingston. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's kind of that time of year too. I think that people get hot and cold, and you get molds, from the moisture and stuff like that. April's very damp, and so you get people with mold allergies, and I don't know. Yeah, it's just, yeah. Anyway, let's move on. What are you calling in about?
I got three really quick questions for you. We're going to travel across the world here, my friend, from Alberta. Daniel Smith. I think Gary Moe, Doug Ford, Pierre Poilievre. I think it's a fair ball, Rickster, to ask the question. I would like to know what their net worth is. If you're in public office and you're running and I know Daniel Smith is a millionaire, probably. I know Pierre Poilievre is, I think. I think that's fair ball. Is that off point, Rickster?
No, I think that we need a lot more transparency from all these politicians. This is not partisan. I mean, all of them. You want to manage the public purse? I want to know if you have a conflict of interest.
Well, and the thing, Rickster, our beautiful Daniel Smithy out of Alberta, Daniel Smith, and with all due respect to her, I think it's Scott Moe, Saskatchewan. Doug Ford, I think, is a multi-millionaire. Okay, if you're in public office, I think fair ball, you should disclose that. And if you've got assets in an oil and gas company in Texas or whatever, I think you should. I think fair ball. If you're going to sit in a public office, Rickster, I think you should be transparent and if you're worth $1 or 100 million, I think you should.
And people need to understand.
Public record.
People need to understand too that as Poilievre stood there tonight and made those demands of Mark Carney to essentially liquidate all of his assets, and then have someone take control of all of his money and invest it for him without him knowing at all where that is going. That is an unprecedented thing to have happen. I don't know of any jurisdiction, any government anywhere that requires that level of detachment from one's own investments. And the greater point is Poilievre himself hasn't taken those steps. He has assets and he hasn't done any of that himself. And he's not held to the same standard as Mark Carney is because Poilievre is just in opposition. He's not in cabinet. He's not in government. He's not in power. So he doesn't have to do a lot of the things when it comes to divestment or disclosure that Mark Carney has to meet. So Carney's already meeting a higher standard of transparency than Poilievre is. And we don't really know what assets Poilievre has either. And as I did my research here and shared that with people here tonight, it looks like Poilievre himself may actually have some investments in Brookfield as well. Now, I want some confirmation of that. I would like to know, but the reality is, there isn't enough transparency out there on his part for me to dig in enough to find out what his level of investment in Brookfield is either. So I don't know. We don't know. So it's kind of rich for a politician to sit there and do what he did tonight, I think, but not that what he's calling for is necessary.
Well, and I think no, I couldn't agree with you more, Rick. Whether it's Coleman, Mark Carney with Brooke Shield, and Pierre Poilievre, but what about Maserati? Jagmeet
right.
Singh,
He's
same,
driving around.
And let's be fair, Ball, and Rickster.
Yeah.
Let's be fair. It goes to not just Pierre Poilievre. It goes to the PPC guy, Maxime Bernier. Goes to all of them, Rick.
Yeah, if you want to be the prime minister, you're going to be the leader of the party. Oh yeah. The
other thing, Rick, I want to say for other callers on, it's really interesting. Donald Trump is now the Trumpster, the Captain Chaos, the orange orangutan. He's come into office for a second time after a 4-year vacation at Mar-a-Lago. The first time Trump got in with Pence, they made a big deal about Trump having all his assets in a blind trust. And now, Rickster, there's been no talk about that since he got in the second time. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, what's that all about? That's called fair transparency, isn't it?
He's purged all of his opposition from government, though, you see, and he's threatened the media with the loss of broadcast licenses, lawsuits, in a major way. So it's having a chilling effect, I think, on media down there. He says that he's dealt with censorship, but there's this other form of censorship, which is intimidation and threats.
No, but I mean, Rick,
he's not getting that level of scrutiny.
But I mean, in Rick and Fairball, when Trump came in 2016 with Pence, who I think may go down as one of the greatest vice presidents of the United States of America, a Christian guy, Pence, they had the big, it was a 10-pile sheet of paper with Trump putting all his assets in trust. And actually, if Trump had done that and sold it off, he'd be way more richer now than he is. But now he's in for a second term. There's nothing mentioned about his assets being in trust with Elon Musk. It's just roll along.
Well, look, I mean, it's just so blatantly obvious that there's a lot of corruption within the Trump administration. I mean, before he even took office, he was out there selling, cryptocurrency meme coins and profiting from that stuff. And then you've got Elon Musk in there. The more I look at that, the more I'm like appalled, because you have this guy who's made his entire fortune on the backs of taxpayers, taking all kinds of government grants and subsidies, tax breaks, in order to become probably the richest guy in the world. And then they bring him in, buys his way into the White House, $270 million. And then he sits there and he's overseeing the Department of Government Efficiency, going in, hacking and slashing, taking a flamethrower to these different departments, but probably not to the departments or to the programs that keep lining his pockets and propping up his government subsidized businesses, not the least of which are things like SpaceX, which I think largely, almost exclusively depends on its survival through government contracts. There's a huge conflict of interest there.
It's taxpayer public money. Oh. It's socialism. It's public money, my friends.
It's actually corporate fascism is what it is. That's what's on display here. That's what it is.
Now, before I jump off the show, Rickster, real quick, I do have to admit, I shopped at the dollar store on the weekend. Okay. Now, we have dollar stores in Alberta, and I got to tell you, I buy a lot of stuff at the dollar store. I'm a cheap oil millionaire. I buy my deodorant there, my spray body stuff, and I mean, I'll buy like a Gillette Under Armour deodorant for men. and it's $2.50 at the dollar store. Richter, the same thing is like $7.50 at Safeway.
Yeah.
It's and you know, I walked through the dollar store the other day, and I'm embarrassed to do it, but I mean, it's all the entire dollar store. It's all made in China.
Not true.
China. There's
not true.
Well, I don't know. There's not too many things made in Canada.
Yes, there are. Yes, there are.
Are there?
Oh, there are.
Well, or
you
America?
check more closely. You'll be surprised.
Oh, am I off base?
Well, I would say probably the majority of stuff is made in China, but you would be surprised at how much stuff in the dollar store comes from Canada. Take a walk down. Take a walk down your food aisle. Take a walk down the soda pop.
I buy the gravy for $1.
They sell over here at my dollar store stuff from the Pop Shop, which is a regional local business. It's been in business here selling the Pop Shop brand sodas. Since I was a kid, not like Coca-Cola, not that big, but Canadian brand, and they sell it at the dollar store. You take a look at, I bought shaving cream made in Canada.
No.
Oh,
Montreal.
Yeah. It says right on it, made in Canada. A bunch of those kinds of products in that aisle, made in Canada, because
that's fair.
Like, I think it's Lever Industries that is one of the companies that manufactures those kinds of products, soaps and things like that, in a Canadian factory. I don't think that shaving cream came from from that factory, but I'll tell you, actually, John, that shaving cream from the dollar store made in Canada is, in my opinion, a better product than the Gillette foamy shaving cream. It'll blow you away. And a fraction of the price. It's better product.
The Rising Dragon says Pepsi is made here. Dragon, is that in Montreal? I'm watching the chat here.
I don't know what it
Dragon
is.
says Pepsi is made here.
Oh yeah, all the soda pops, like even Coca-Cola, Pepsi, those companies manufacture those products generally within the region in which they're sold, regardless of the country, and that's because it's so expensive to ship. You know, it's a lot of weight there, so they do set up factories in various jurisdictions, and there's a local bottling plant even here, and then they ship that stuff out regionally. So it's amazing. Like, even at the dollar store, you can buy lots of stuff made in Canada.
Well, Rick, I'm going to travel back in the memory machine, maybe a year ago. My friend Don from Red Deer, Alberta, with the museum, you know, the historical museum.
Yes.
You put on a big video on Jeeps. There was a lot of stuff, military stuff, made in World War II in Canada, in Ontario, that it wasn't made in the United States or China. It was made in Canada. We can do a lot of things here, Rick, when we put our hearts and minds together as British Columbians, Canadians, Manitobans, Newfoundlanders, Quebecers. We can, and my point is about my comment, we're okay on our own, my friend. We do not need Captain Chaos and the orange orangutan. We are quite fine on our own. And maybe we need to dial things back and get back to made in Canada, my friends.
Yeah, somebody just joined us on the line. Who just joined us? Who's there?
It's me. It's Isabel. Hi, John.
Hey there.
We love you, Isabel from Alberta, my dear. Love you, love you, love you. God's blessing.
Even though I had to sing "Oh Canada" to our friend in the States.
Tell us about that, Isabel. Ooh.
No, you were on the line with her, John, the other night when the guy called in and the big melee. Online.
Now, Rick, is that our friend John from the United States of America, not Rimby John or Toronto John?
No,
the one from the States.
Yeah. Well, we love him. We pray for him. He needs to get a little more educated. That's all. No big deal.
So what's on your mind tonight, Isabel?
Well, you know, I don't know what to think anymore with Carney. He's kind of like, he's MIA, all right. for whatever reason, and I still have questions for Pierre, but we'll see how it happens. What choice do we have? Really?
I
know it ain't going to
can't
be
answer that
pretty.
tonight.
Well, I tell you, I drive around my neighborhood, which isn't big. We got like 2,500 people here. I have not seen a Liberal, or I saw one NDP sign, and the rest are all Conservative. So,
yeah, in my riding, that's the case too, because the incumbent is a Conservative. I don't think the other parties were ready. The Liberals did put a candidate up, and I've seen one sign for the Liberal candidate here, and nothing for any of the other parties. Period. Nothing.
No.
Strangest election
like I said,
ever.
Yeah,
well,
NDP sign
Isabel,
in the middle of nowhere.
Well, Isabel, I'm in Alberta. I'm Marimba John. And Isabel, if you can find one Liberal sign, well, across the entire province, there might be one or two, and we're not ripping or tearing them down. We love them. We love our Liberals. We there's a couple of NDPers too there, Isabel, but not too many, my dear. Not too many.
No.
The NDP is in trouble. I don't know if they will even have official party status at the end of this, from everything I've seen so far.
It doesn't look good for them.
No.
Not. I mean, and I it's bad because I cannot vote. Wish I could, but I can't.
Why can't you vote?
Well, Isabel,
I'm not a Canadian
what do you mean you
citizen.
can't vote? You can't vote.
I'm not a Canadian citizen.
I didn't know
that. What are you? What are you?
I'm a British immigrant from 1957.
Okay, but
the only
that's
reason
okay,
I never took it out was because at the time when I went to do it before I got married, I would had to have forfeited my British birth certificate.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't want to do that. Now I've been told since then it's changed. I mean, my certificate is a scroll. It's not a card. It's a scroll.
That's cool. I want one of those.
It's got everything from the doctor that delivered me, the hospital that I was born in, my father's profession at that time, even the minister who christened me, the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle's on there.
Okay.
So everything, and at the point when I was born, my father was a little tipsy, shall we say. So he gave me 5 last names.
What?
So when people ask me my middle name, I don't got one.
Okay.
He gave you 5 last names?
5. So I am the 4th generation of Isabella, but I don't like that name, so I use Isabel. Okay. And each one of us has changed it differently, like Bella, Isa, Ella. My mother took Isa. My grandmother had Bella. My great-grandmother had Ella. I took Izzy or Isabel. So I completely changed the name, took out the A and the extra L, and I put in an O. Unfortunately, when I go to the doctor, they always yell out, Isabella! And I'm like, oh, God.
Okay, that is Isabella Rimby John. My family, we came from Norway in the late 1800s to Hender, Minnesota, and we came up in 1918, trashing crew, the one brother left, Thomas Alexander Crummy Sturdal. My grandmother was Mildred Adrene Manson Crummy, and she became, Isabel, a Canadian citizen when she was 75 years old. My great uncle Clifford Crummy left me all the oil money. Didn't he? Remained an American, but I mean, she became a Canadian citizen at 75 years old. And can you not do the same thing, or maybe you don't want to?
Oh, I can, but with today's financial situation, it's like $600 to become a Canadian citizen now.
Oh, and I wonder, Isabel, I think when my grandmother, you could be a dual citizen. She didn't know that. So I think when she became a Canadian, she maybe gave up her American citizenship. I don't know. and that's what both got.
Yeah, I thought, can you not just be a dual citizenship if you're born here of immigrant parents?
Well, you there's a special relationship between the United States and Canada. I don't know if that applies to you coming from the other side of the world. I don't know.
Yeah, because
It's interesting though.
Yeah, I mean, my passport's good till 2029. Not that I'll ever fly again because I always pass out when I land.
Well, but I mean,
you
you really are a true Canadian. I mean, you are the essence, my dear, of Canada. You're what Canada is based upon with immigrants. And here's the thing, Rickster. We're all immigrants. We all come from somewhere, unless you're Indigenous. We're all immigrants, and we arrived here and we wanted to make Canada a better place.
Yes, my husband was French Canadian, and he always said, what was it? He said, we didn't come across at the same time as you did, but we were here to greet you when you got here.
Well,
I was like, okay.
Yeah. Well, that works, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, somewhere in his lineage, there was some Indigenous, somewhere in the line. But I've looked into it, and I would love to have had it before this election, because on my lawn is a conservative sign I support, but I can't vote. And if things got better, then I could apply for my citizenship. But at this point, $600 is a little bit much.
There's something wrong with that, Rickster, with our system, that you can't vote. Because I said to my friend at Safeway the other day, Gabriel, he's a kind of a woke guy, and he's going to vote for Coleman Carney. And I said, that's okay. He goes, I know you're conservative. And I said, you know what, Gabriel, I love you. My grandfather fought in World War I. I don't care who you vote for. You vote for anybody you want to. NDP, Liberal, Conservative, Green, PPC. I don't care who you vote for. My grandfather laid his life on the line in World War I for you to vote. So my mom and dad, Isabel, always instilled in me, just vote. Just vote. We don't care who you vote for, but make a vote, and then you can bellyache about it at Tim Hortons over the coffee.
Oh, well, my Tim Hortons is actually, and I shouldn't say this, but they're all, how can I put this? Caucasian. How did that sound?
That's okay, you know.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you do it for one person, that's an immigrant. Then everybody else is going to yell, well, you know, we're all landed immigrants, and we all have, you know, permanent resident status. Then that brings in another group of people who could sway. That's always my fear. You know, just saying. But on another topic, you guys were talking about the dollar store.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of, like you were saying, Rick's food. Dare products are Canadian, and they are in the dollar stores.
Yeah.
And I always turn it around and go, where are you from? Want to know.
It's surprising how much stuff at the dollar store actually comes from Canada. And
yes.
I think people are taking more notice of, you know, where things are coming from when they go to the grocery store too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people, rather than going in and just taking their, you know, groceries off the shelf, people are they're looking at it. And for me, sometimes I can't see because I don't bring my reading glasses. So I take a snapshot and then I blow it up and go, oh, okay, now I can read that.
Yeah. Yeah. Produce.
No, but I mean, Rick and Isabel, I mean, I buy a lot of stuff at the dollar store because I'm kind of pretty thrifty and careful with the money. And, you know, you can look at the same item as $2.50 at the dollar store and it's like $8 at Safeway. And it's the same item. Well, I want to keep that extra $6 in my pocket. I'm sorry. And you know, that extra $6 in my pocket, you know what I do with it, Isabel? I give it to somebody homeless on the street who needs home care, who needs help, that's how I'm careful with my money, you know?
Yeah. We're lucky here in a small community because we have what's called the caring cupboard. So the church, every Sunday, they put out before Sunday what's needed for the caring cupboard for the less fortunate in our community. And people donate for that. And so, yeah, and even our St. Vincent de Paul that we have, even though we're a very small community, we get donations from the farmers, fruits, vegetables, and that kind of thing. And boxes are made up, like for Easter dinner, the boxes are made up and the grocery stores donate and the farmers donate and people apply for this that are on subsidy or pension. And they can apply for those boxes, and then those boxes are delivered to the people in the town.
Mm-hmm.
We have a system where we do look after each other. That's why I am so glad I live in a small community again. I would never leave. I don't have to put up with the outside crap that I hear in like the closest city to me is London. Rick's parents live in London. So do I want to go back to London? No. Not from what I hear. I'll stay out here. I'm happy out here. The community is small. It's a day trip to Strathroy. So, hey, I day trip every once in a while.
Well, and Isabel from Alberta, you know what's wonderful about you, my dear? God loves you. God loves you. You're a real Canadian. And a person, even though you don't have your Canadian citizenship, that's irrelevant. We love you. We love what you do for the community, because you're not just doing it for you. You're spreading God's love around the world, my dear. You really, really are. Even to our buddy John in the United States of America.
Yeah. I tried to serenade him. I'm not a very good singer, but I thought I would stick it in his ear because, you know, I didn't like what he was saying about us, so I was trying to be polite.
Well, and with that, John, let's get a final thought from you for the night.
Well, we got to get a final thought from Isabel.
Final thought from you, and then we'll get Isabel to wrap up.
Okay,
so go ahead.
Isabel, I'm loving the Orange Orangutan as a song maybe tonight, but anyways, he's the Captain Chaos. The Orange Orangutan, and Rickster made it up special for us. So, you know.
He did a good job.
But I do want to say, Rickster, is my final thought. To my friends in the United States of America, I'm part American. We love you. You're part of us. We are part of everything for over 100 and some years. It is the Orange Orangutan in the Oval Office causing us a little bit of trouble. Rickster, it's a bump in the road. Isabel, it's a little bit of a bump in the road. But anyways, may God love you and may God bless everybody. And we pray for peace, Rickster, in Israel, Gaza, and Ukraine and Russia. I can't forget my friends there. We pray for peace, my friend. Pray for peace. Isabel, if you need a new husband, give me a call. I'm in Alberta.
And with that, before we get the final thoughts from Isabel, because you talk about peace, I just bring your attention tonight to this missile attack on the community of Sumy. Russian missiles struck there. Something like this.
Wow. Wow.
Ворог ударив 2 балістичними ракетами по центру міста Суми. Зараз проводяться ліквідаційні аварійні роботи, надається допомога пораненим. В цей час знаходилось дуже багато людей на вулиці. Ворог розраховував досягти найбільше нанесення ураження людям по місту Суми. Наразі зараз надається допомога постраждалим. Всі служби працюють на місці події.
More images.
He does not want peace.
No. No, he doesn't.
He doesn't want peace.
Nope.
That's unbelievable.
And so with
And that's in a civilian area, right?
it is, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
My God. Yeah, we need to pray for peace. And this is Passover, and Easter's around the corner. This is devastating. Every night I ask for peace, and I ask, for the trial and the tribulation of the evil to stop. Every night. I have no idea what my grandchildren are going to face, but it's not going to be the world that we grew up in.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
Well, with that, Isabel, yeah, again, just
That's
a final
heart-wrenching
thought
for a
wrap it up.
child. Heart-wrenching for a child. I just wish the world peace.
Me too.
We're terrible to each other. We really are.
Yeah, the people of Ukraine have suffered immensely.
Yeah.
And it continues.
For sure.
Thank
Well,
you.
Peace for the world and bless everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, Isabel. Love you guys. I will be back tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern. On the flip side, and our thoughts and prayers are with all victims of war tonight, and with the people of Ukraine. See you tomorrow on the flip side.
We watched the old wall crumble, we heard the freedom's call, but now it's rising higher under Putin's shadowed thrall. From Ukraine's fields to Moscow's streets, a cold divide begins to creep. A world of fear where truth is bent, promises are sold too cheap. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. All in all, we're calling Putin's fall. We don't need their blind instruction, we've seen the lies unfold. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. He speaks of glory of days long past, where all would kneel before his cast. With tanks and threats he stakes his claim, while silencing those who dare to blame. Propaganda clouds the mind, we don't need no education, blind to the bloodshed and the strife, where Putin's dreams cut deep like knives. Can't you hear the children cry? Can't you see the tanks roll by? In Putin's world where truth is broken, we're just pawns in the lies unspoken. A wall of fear, a wall of light, where freedom fades into the night. We stand upon the edge once more as Cold War ghosts return to life. They tell us not to question, to walk in shadowed lines. But we've seen the fall, we've felt the cold, we know the weight of all their crimes. Ukraine's cries, a world denied, a broken bridge that's left behind. Putin's quest for power's throne, they're building walls we can't condone. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. All in all, we're trapped within his thrall. We don't need their false direction, we see through the stories they've sold. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. So if we rise, if we resist, we break the walls they built like fists. For in our hearts where hope is strong, there's strength to fight against the wrong. But if we fall, if we concede, remember what the future needs. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. So if we rise, if we resist, we break the walls they've built like fists. For in our hearts where hope is strong, there's strength to fight against the wrong. But if we fall, if we concede, remember what the future needs. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.